The sun was setting over Tesla's gigafactory in Nevada, casting long shadows over the sleek, silvery cars lined up in perfect rows. But there was no one there to admire them. No cameras, no reporters, no media buzz. This was the quiet before the storm. Somewhere within the massive walls of this electric kingdom, one of the most ambitious men of the 21st century was about to embark on a journey that would change everything. Elon Musk, the visionary, the billionaire, the enigma, had decided to go undercover. But why? Why would the man who could pick up the phone and speak to world leaders, the one who could send rockets into space with a tweet, choose to slip into the shadows of his own empire? Why would someone so powerful, so visible, suddenly vanish into the crowd of his own company? The answer, as shocking as it was simple, lay in a truth that few knew about the man behind Tesla. As much as he loved his company, as much as he believed in the electric revolution, there was something beneath the surface that he feared, something he'd been unable to grasp despite his most exhaustive efforts. Rumors had begun to swirl around Tesla's factories. Employees whispered about burnout, questionable decisions, and an increasingly hostile work culture. Rivals were beginning to talk about cracks in the empire. How could Tesla, once a shining beacon of innovation, be facing such internal chaos? Elon's usual methods of oversight, direct commands, weekly meetings, even surprise visits, weren't cutting it. There was a disconnect between him and the everyday reality of the company. To truly understand what was happening, he needed to dive into the heart of the operation, unnoticed, unrecognized. So, one chilly evening, he did just that. Wearing a plain hoodie and jeans, he slipped into the factory floor, blending into the sea of Tesla employees. No one knew he was there. No one knew they were about to unknowingly reveal everything. As the hum of machinery filled the air, Elon Musk took his first steps into a world he thought he knew, only to find that it was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. And this was just the beginning. It was an ordinary Monday morning, the kind that seemed deceptively calm, as though nothing could possibly disturb the routine of the factory floor. Elon, still in his nondescript hoodie, blended into the background. The employees around him were focused, eyes on the tasks at hand, moving like clockwork through their shifts. But that morning something felt off. A subtle tension hung in the air, something that hadn't been there before. As Elon walked deeper into the heart of the factory, he saw it firsthand. Frayed tempers, worn-out faces, and whispers between. Employees who thought no one was listening. It wasn't just the pressure of deadlines or the demands of innovation. This was something different. The spark of excitement that had once electrified Tesla's workforce seemed to have dimmed. Then, as if on cue, a sharp voice cut through the murmur of the factory floor. "Not good enough, Sam. The welds are off again. Again. How many times do I have to tell you?" Elon froze. His eyes locked on a scene unfolding in front of him. A young technician, Sam, standing before a middle manager named Greg. Sam's face was flushed with frustration, his hands trembling as he tried to explain. "I swear I'm trying. But the tools are malfunctioning and—" Greg interrupted him, dismissing his concerns with a sharp wave. "You're making excuses. Fix it now." His tone was cold, dismissive, as if Sam's well-being didn't even register. Elon's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a problem with the work. It was a problem with the culture. He'd heard murmurs about leadership issues. But this was a breakdown of trust, a failure to understand the people doing the work. He stepped forward, instinctively, wanting to intervene, but he held back. He wasn't Elon Musk here. He was just a fly on the wall, a witness. Yet the ache in his chest was undeniable. He wanted to fix it, to make things right. As Sam slowly walked away, shoulders slumped in. "Defeat," something inside Elon snapped. This wasn't just a passing moment. It was a signal, one that told him all was not well in the empire he had worked so hard to build. The very foundation of Tesla, the heart of the company, was beginning to crack. The thought hit him like a ton of bricks. If things didn't change, if he didn't act, this empire, his empire, was in danger. Elon couldn't shake the image of Sam's defeated expression from his mind. He had seen that same look in so many of his employees, faces that once beamed with the excitement of changing the world, now drawn tight with stress, frustration, and fear. It was a slow burn, this undercurrent of disillusionment, but it was spreading like wildfire, and it was clear that the problems weren't just surface-level mistakes or isolated incidents. The culture of Tesla was rotting from within, and no amount of top-down management or motivational speeches was going to fix it. But how could he, Elon Musk, the visionary who had revolutionized space travel, electric vehicles, and energy storage, be blind to this? How had he not seen this happening under his nose? The next day, Elon tried to gain more insight into the daily struggles of the employees. He moved through the factory, speaking to workers as if he were one of them. He'd learned quickly that his reputation preceded him, and his attempts to fly under the radar had become more difficult. People started to recognize his voice, his posture, even the way he carried himself. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't hide the fact that he was, well, Elon Musk. And the harder he tried to blend in, the more it seemed to push people away. He approached one of the senior engineers, Michelle, a woman who had been with Tesla for over 5 years, whose name he had heard in meetings but never really spoken to face-to-face. She was working at a station that tested battery components, and when she noticed him standing there, she didn't flinch. But she didn't greet him with the usual, "honored to meet you" pleasantries either. "Can I help you?" Michelle asked, her voice flat but not unfriendly. She had no idea who he was, not in this moment, and that was just what Elon needed. "I'm just here to learn. What's been going on around here? What's the real story?" He felt an odd sense of vulnerability, like a man walking through a room full of mirrors. Would she see through him? Would she sense that something wasn't right? Michelle paused, glancing over at her colleagues. Then, in a low voice, she spoke. "You really want to know? The company's falling apart. We're told to push harder, every day. But there's no support. The tools are outdated. The systems are broken. And upper management? They don't listen. It's like they think we're just numbers on a chart. They don't care about the people who make Tesla what it is. They don't care about the engineers, the workers in the factory, the people who believe in the mission." Her words struck Elon like a punch in the gut. She didn't sugarcoat it. It wasn't just about malfunctioning machinery. This was about trust, about respect. He was part of the problem. But just as quickly, that realization twisted into self-doubt. What if this was all too much? What if he had taken on too much? Hadn't seen the cracks forming over the years? Later, as he stood alone in one of the factory's quieter hallways, Elon felt a weight settle on his chest. The responsibility, no, the burden, of what was unfolding here at Tesla and across all of his ventures began to feel suffocating. Maybe it wasn't enough to simply have grand ideas. Maybe the truth was far more painful. He didn't know everything. He hadn't been paying attention in the right ways. His mind raced with these questions. And in that moment, something else emerged. Maybe this was bigger than Tesla. Maybe this was about everything he had built, everything he was, his very identity. A light blinked on in his mind. This wasn't just about fixing the factory's problems. It was about fixing himself too. But how could he do that when even his own people didn't believe in him anymore? How could he face the daunting challenge ahead when the ones closest to him, the ones he thought had his back, were already giving up on the dream? He wasn't sure anymore, and the uncertainty gnawed at him like a weight he couldn't shake. Elon spent the next few days in a daze, his mind spinning as he moved through the factory. Each new interaction with employees added layers of complexity to the problem he was facing, but none of it brought him any closer to the solution. In fact, the deeper he dug, the more he realized just how far the disconnect had grown. It wasn't just about the employees' frustrations. It was about a massive cultural shift within Tesla, one that had gone unnoticed by the very people leading it. But it wasn't until a conversation with a familiar face that the true turning point came. One evening, after a long day of wandering, the factory floor, he bumped into Anna, Tesla's COO. She was one of the few people in his inner circle who had consistently been a voice of reason, a grounding force in his whirlwind of ideas. He had always trusted her judgment, and her presence had been a constant in Tesla's rapid expansion. But there was something off about her tonight. "Anna," he said, stepping into her path, "we need to talk." She raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. "Is everything okay?" Her tone was measured, but there was something else there. Something unspoken. "I've been hearing things," Elon said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Things I don't like. About morale. About leadership. Why haven't you told me about this?" Anna hesitated. "I didn't think it was time. Or maybe I thought you knew already. You've been distracted, Elon. You've been spread too thin. I didn't want to add more to your plate." He felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Distracted? Was that how they saw him? "I've been distracted?" he asked, incredulous. "Anna, I'm building the future. I'm not distracted. I'm leading. And if I didn't know what was going on here, then it's your job to tell me. You should have come to me sooner." Her eyes softened, but the weight of what she was about to say hung heavy in the air. "Elon, you've become unreachable. Everyone's afraid to speak up. They don't feel like you understand them anymore. They don't feel like you care about them. You've been consumed by the next big thing, the next rocket, the next car, the next idea. And Tesla? Tesla's become a machine, not a family." His heart pounded in his chest as the words sank in. He had always prided himself on being a visionary, someone who was always looking forward, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But was he so focused on what Tesla could become that he'd lost sight of who it was built for? "Anna, He stopped, unable to finish the thought. He had no words to respond to the revelation. The truth stung like salt on an open wound, and for the first time, Elon felt the weight of his own inadequacies. "You're not a bad person, Elon," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "But you're not the same person you used to be. You've lost touch with what really matters, and so has Tesla." The silence that followed was suffocating. It was as if the world had shifted beneath his feet, and everything he thought he understood about his company, his leadership, and his mission had crumbled in an instant, for the first time in a long time. Elon Musk felt a profound sense of doubt, not just about the future of Tesla, but about his own ability to lead. How had he allowed this to happen? Was it already too late to fix? The weight of that question pressed down on him like an anchor, and for the first time, the relentless drive to innovate seemed far less important than the simple task of rebuilding. Trust, Anna's words echoed in his mind. Tesla had become a machine, not a family. It was a painful truth, but it was the one thing that could help him change the course of everything. He knew then he had to make things right, not just for Tesla, but for the people who had given everything to it, and he couldn't wait any longer. Elon knew it was time. The moment had arrived. He could no longer stand on the sidelines, hoping things would fix themselves. Everything had built to this point, and now, with the weight of the factory's disillusionment pressing down on him, he had to act. The revelation with Anna had shattered his view of Tesla, and in the days that followed, he spent hours reflecting on the hard truth of her words. Tesla had become a machine, and the human element, the heart of the company, was at risk of being lost forever. He gathered his senior team for a meeting, something he hadn't done in months. As the team filtered in, their expressions were a mixture of curiosity and guarded anticipation. The usual energy that accompanied such gatherings, quick smiles, jokes, the ever-present hum of productivity, was absent. When Elon stepped into the room, the air was thick with tension. They all knew something was wrong. Anna had briefed a few of them on the conversation they'd had, and word was beginning to spread that Elon had been acting differently. No longer the invincible leader who seemed impervious to failure, but a man who was grappling with something much larger than any of them had realized. He didn't sit at the head of the table. Instead, he stood at the center of the room, looking each of them in the eye. The usual bravado was gone. In its place was a quiet, raw vulnerability, something none of them had ever seen from him before. "Listen, I know things haven't been going well," Elon began, his voice steady but heavy. "I've been blind to the issues we're facing. I've been so focused on the future, on building the next great thing, that I lost sight of what matters most. The people who make Tesla the company it is." There was a moment of stunned silence. No one had ever heard him speak like this, so open, so self-aware. Elon's reputation for being a workaholic, relentless, and often dismissive of concerns outside of his grand vision was well known. And yet here he was, acknowledging the cracks in the foundation he had built. "Most of you have been with me for years," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "We've built something incredible together, but I've failed to protect the spirit of what Tesla really is. This company was founded on innovation, yes, but it was also founded on people, the ones who pour their hearts into this mission. The engineers, the workers, the ones who believed in me, in us, before we even knew how to make it work." Elon's eyes swept across the room, and for the first time, he felt as though he could truly see them, the people he had long taken for granted. He wasn't looking at numbers, at figures, or at investors. He was looking at the faces of those who had believed in him, who had given everything to his dream. And for the first time, he understood the responsibility that came with that trust. "I've been so focused on what's next that I forgot to care for what's now," he said, his voice cracking. "But I'm not giving up on this company. I'm not giving up on all of you, and I'm not going to let Tesla become a machine. We're going to rebuild together. We're going to create a company that doesn't just change the world, it cares for the people in it." The room was silent for a long beat. Then, one by one, the team began to nod. A few exchanged glances, their faces softening. It wasn't an immediate fix. There was no magic solution that could undo the damage that had been done, but it was a start. For the first time in a long time, the team saw the Elon they had followed years ago, the passionate, driven man who believed in the mission and the people behind it. And just like that, the shift began. The room, once tense with uncertainty, slowly filled with something new, hope. It wasn't the end of the battle, but it was the turning point. Elon knew that from here, there was no going back. He would have to earn their trust, their respect, every single day. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he could. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. Tesla wasn't just his company anymore. It was their company, and together they would rebuild it. In the weeks that followed, the transformation at Tesla was palpable. It wasn't a sudden overnight change. Elon knew better than anyone that real growth, real healing, took time. But the signs were unmistakable. Employees began to engage more openly, offering solutions and sharing concerns that had once been buried under layers of fear and uncertainty. Morale started to rise, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. Elon spent his days on the factory floor, not as the unreachable CEO, but as one of them. He still wore the same hoodie and jeans, but now he moved through the spaces with a genuine desire to listen, to understand. He spoke to Sam, the technician he had seen so defeated that first Day now standing tall again and leading a team of his own. Sam shared his frustrations, but there was a light in his eyes, a light that had been absent when Elon first saw him. "We're getting there," Sam said, smiling for the first time in a while. "It's not perfect, but I think we're starting to trust each other again." Elon nodded, feeling a weight lift from his chest. It wasn't perfect, no, but it was real. And that was enough. At the executive level, changes came too. Elon empowered Anna more, stepping back and letting her take the reins in areas where she had once been hesitant to assert herself. It wasn't just about giving her more responsibility. It was about creating a leadership structure where all voices mattered, where collaboration was encouraged, not just compliance. In a company like Tesla, that kind of culture had been hard to come by, but with Elon's new commitment, a shared vision began to take shape. One afternoon, as he walked through the parking lot of the Gigafactory, watching the cars being loaded for shipment, Elon stopped and gazed at the horizon. The sunset was breathtaking, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple. It was a moment of quiet reflection, a stark contrast to the intensity of the past few weeks. He thought about how far Tesla had come and how far it still had to go. The road ahead was uncertain. There would always be challenges, failures, and obstacles. But he knew something now that he hadn't fully understood before. It wasn't enough to build great products or change industries. The real mission, the one that could sustain everything else, was to build a company that was worth believing in, a place where people felt valued, seen, and heard. He didn't have all the answers yet. He couldn't undo the mistakes of the past, but he was ready to face them. Ready to lead with humility, with empathy, and with the understanding that a vision isn't built alone. It's built together. As the last of the workers packed up for the night, Elon took a deep breath, his heart a little lighter than it had been in a long time. It wasn't about the next groundbreaking innovation or the next big idea. It was about being present in the moment, about leading with purpose and authenticity. And with that, a quiet smile crept across his face. Maybe this was the real revolution after all.